Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sessions with Paola. Guys, so as you know, I am enamored with inspiring stories. And today we have a very special guest, John Eagan and Dr. Claudia Rodriguez. She's an expert in addiction psychiatrist. You guys have seen her in the show before. And we're going to talk a little bit about stories and addiction. But before we start, guys, for those of you out there who are a fan of the fan Euphoria, we just lost Angus Cloud. He was only 25 years old and he has been battling with addiction for a long time. I want to quote some of the things that he says. He says, people don't understand addiction. It's easy to talk about it. It's easy to say, just say no. But for someone who's in active addiction, this is damn near impossible. And they will throw their whole life away and die because of the disease. And then they say, it's not a disease because you choose to do drugs. You don't choose to get cancer. Unfortunately, many people still feel this way, even though there's so much education about addiction being a disease. And today, guys, I want you to put your phones away. I really want you to be with us because we're about to listen to an inspiring story of triumph and courage. John has been in long-term recovery, and today we're going to hear a little bit about what his journey in this whole process has been like. So John, thank you so much for being here with us and for being willing to share, the rawness of what this really means. And guys, before we get started, this idea of addiction being a choice, you choose to do drugs, you don't choose to get cancer. What are your thoughts about that?
In my own journey, there were many times where I was 100% convinced I would not use again due to the consequences of the day before. I lost the power of choosing whether I got high somewhere along the way. The metaphor of once a cucumber becomes a pickle, there's nothing that's going to make it a cucumber again. I don't know when, but I got pickled and I was using no matter what.
Wow, thank you, John. What about you, Dr. Rodriguez? What do you feel?
Yeah, in witnessing kind of change happen in front of my eyes in many of my patients, it's clear that when you cross into the realm of having a substance use disorder or an addiction, it's like John is expressing, it's not a choice. It's not something that you kind of like wake up in the day and say, oh, today's going to be a good day to not go in that direction or to go in that direction. Your body, your brain, the way that things change over time after you've been exposed to a substance really takes that power away from you. And I often think about finding empowerment and recognizing that powerlessness because it really helps you see this is not something really that I can control. This is not a choice. It's a choice the first time that we drink. It's the first time you use cannabis, you use cocaine. But once it crosses into that kind of, once it changes that dynamic, once the relationship with that drug changes, and once it just really takes over, I think it's clear that nobody would choose to lose so much of their life to a substance. If it was a choice, people would just stop all the time.
Yeah, thank you for that. And John, can you invite us into how did this whole thing get started for you?
So I was growing up, I was a child who I had this distorted belief that I had to be the best to earn my parents' love. That was never said, or even looking back, that actually wasn't the atmosphere growing up. But I had siblings that were front of the newspaper and I just thought I had to be the best at something. I actually put myself into studying as much as I could. So I was going to be the best student of the family and I can take tests very well. Got a scholarship to a prep school, graduated top of the class in the prep school, got a scholarship to college. I'm not a dummy. But I had this kind of distorted belief that as long as I just achieved maximum status of whatever I was doing, I was going to be okay. But I just realized it was never enough. Even being at the top was never enough. And so throughout high school, I dabbled with drinking and drugging, but it never really took hold. Even in college, I was one of the people that would drink and party every day, but I'd go to the library for 2 hours a day. And so I'm watching my roommates fail out of college and I'm maintaining a high GPA. And then once leaving college, I got a job. I was developing software around the world. It was during the Y2K period. It was in 1998. And I don't remember exactly why, but somebody offered me a line of cocaine, and I did it to stay awake because we were working long-hour days, and it just became a daily habit. But for a while, success and the lifestyle were like on this meteoric rise. So the highs were amazing. The bank balance was going up. The parties were great. The socialization was great. Obviously cocaine's a euphoric drug. Everything was feeling amazing. I literally thought I'd found the thing that was going to make everything perfect. And slowly but surely, I started just to give all my things away. I didn't even realize, but before I knew it, I was way past the point of being able to stop on my own.
Well, John, even when you talk about first time doing a line of cocaine, and then all of a sudden I'm using it daily, it sounds like it's a very rapid, it just kind of grabs you. Tell me, and even when you're saying, I started giving my things away and I didn't even realize, at what point, because I think a lot of people talk about this idea of rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering what you guys feel and think about that. When I think about that concept, I'm like, is it like a hopeless point of desperation? And does everybody need to go through that? Because some people say, well, that person just hasn't hit the rock bottom yet.
Mm-hmm.
When they hit the rock bottom, then they're going to start seeking treatment. I don't know if that's entirely true.
My take is that a bottom is a bottom is a bottom. So looking back now and in being in the field, I know that on paper, I have a very low bottom. But my pain doesn't have sharper teeth than somebody else's pain. And just because, there's people that the rock bottom is their wife threatens to leave them. And that's like, oh, I gotta save my marriage. That wasn't enough for me. My bottom, that cocaine daily use led to, I think it went on about 7 years. And then the nose stops working when you put foreign substances up it. And so my dealer taught me how to smoke it. And before I knew it, I was homeless on the streets in Phoenix. And I think that time I went out to my 4th treatment center. And the plan was just to use, hopefully not get caught. And if I did, just do what I always did and be like, sorry, I want to be sober. And I don't know.
I'm sorry, I just want to interrupt for a minute and pause, guys, because you go from prep school, top of your class. Guys, listen, people out there who are making assumptions that, addiction looks like this, or people suffering from addiction. You go from that to all of a sudden, nose is no longer working, right? And then, of course, the dealer, I'll give you a helping hand.
Got an idea.
I got an idea.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden being homeless on the streets.
Yeah, I mean, if I go back a couple months before I was homeless, there was a gentleman that he was the guy I partied hard with, and he was the lawyer in Philadelphia, and I was the banker. And on paper, everyone aspired to be like us. But we were in this cataclysmic downward spiral. And when you mention about, I always thought I was too smart to be a junkie. Because everyone my whole life told me I was too smart. And so I've never met someone too dumb to get sober, but I've met a lot of people way too smart. They just try to overthink it, and they don't realize that they're battling. My addiction is so much more cunning and baffling and smarter than I'll ever be. So even if I think, okay, just don't do this, the disease will be like, okay, and it's just like this sleight of hand. Then I end up, I'm like, how did I do it again? But yeah.
And I wonder, because when you talk about, right, like we're talking about that time, we're talking about being homeless, we're talking about even looking back at that time, were there things that now you look back, and of course, I'm sure now you see it with very differently, but at the time, really, how did shame play a role? What were some things that you remember that you're like, I never thought I was going to be there, but seeing myself back there?
So 2 things. One, I was a chubby fat kid with glasses and a mole on my face, and somewhere along my teen years, I kind of blossomed into where I started to get attention from females, and I didn't realize that I was using all of that manipulation, charm, wit. I wanted people to do what I wanted them to do. That coupled with I had braces, so I have these. We were laughing. I got big teeth, like Jim Carrey teeth.
The big T team, welcome to
Yeah.
We're here.
So much so that even today, people think that they're fake. They think I have dent, but they're my real teeth. And one of my worldly possessions when I was homeless is I had a toothbrush. So I had a pair of cargo shorts, a t-shirt, a sweatshirt, and my toothbrush. And so I was always just like kind of, it was almost like I would just brush nonstop. I was so afraid I would lose my teeth because all the people I got high with had no teeth, you know. And so in a way, these kept me sick because here I am homeless for a couple months, getting high with people with no teeth. And my first thought is, they have a problem, not me. But we're both homeless, but because I have my teeth, I'm not as bad. So that rock bottom, like that, they're in a much worse position than me. And shame, you know, you do things against your value system all the time to obtain the substance, to get high, to forget about what you just did. And that cycle is deadly. When I became homeless, the idea, I became everything I'd ever, so I'm from prep school outside the suburbs of Philadelphia. I think I said Philadelphia, I was lying. I'm from the suburbs of Philadelphia. So anything I knew about city life was, I saw it in a movie or read it in a book. And so I emulated that when I was homeless. And so I had a cardboard sign and it said, wallet stolen. And for a while I made a lot of money panhandling. And then I would steal stuff from mom and pop, almost like Home Depot, but like mom and pop versions because the security was less. And then I would just kind of pawn all those items and maintain it. There was, I don't know, somewhere along the way, a lady of the night. When you're homeless, there's really like a block radius that is your life. That's what that becomes your home. And this lady of the night saw me and she came up and she goes, I've seen you around. And she says, you know, you can make money the old fashioned way. But I think I told you I'm smart. I was like, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. But the compulsion and obsession to use was on. And so I said, well, what would it entail? And she hooked me up with, I guess it would be what a pimp is. And it was a lady. And she set up dates for wealthy women in Scottsdale, Arizona. And so I would go to these dates and perform acts and get paid for my time. But fast forward, I'm not eating, I'm not showering. They don't want to pay for me. And so that male escorting led to full male prostitution. And so I would perform vile acts for $5, $10 on anyone that had money to get high, to forget about what I just did. And so it was nothing short of a nightmare. And it was also one of those things, because I am a heterosexual male, this is something I was never going to talk about, ever. I was taking that to my grave. And it almost did. You know, I thought I was the only one. So.
John, I feel so grateful that you're sharing that story with us now, because I think, you know, it's something that is not talked about enough, right? And so I think, thank you so much for just inviting us into that world, Dr. Rodriguez. You know, you're familiar with these stories. One of the things that I witnessed when Dr. Rodriguez, my sister, in case you guys don't know, but I'm like my sister, when she was relocating from Boston, she shared with me a lot of the stories of her patients saying goodbye. And the common denominator in the stories was, Dr. Rodriguez, you treated me like a human being. You sat with me and you didn't judge me and you supported me and you were there for me. So Dr. Rodriguez told me about John, and, you know, him and I have met before. And we're like, yeah, this story is just so impactful. I hadn't heard it before. This is my first time. Dr. Rodriguez, what are you sitting with as you're listening to John's story? I see you in tune. I see you there.
I could cry and I might. It's just amazing. It's amazing to witness. And, you know, I met John just recently. He told me a snippet of that on like our last meeting. I was on the way out and he's like, just a little bit of my story. Like, I found myself homeless. And I'm looking at this man in front of me who we're connecting to see we could work together in this world of addiction treatment. And I just with that one sentence, or paragraph or whatever it is that you shared with me, I left so fulfilled and touched and inspired and just like grateful that I have witnessed change, and that I have been that I full-heartedly believe it. And I'm still just so shocked by it, and yet like, yeah, you did it, and how incredible is that? So I'm sitting with, and then you bring up, stories from my patients. So, obviously like emotions are everywhere. It's amazing. And that's why I think it's so important to believe in the fact that recovery exists. Almost as many people who suffer with a substance use disorder in the nation, that amount, or even slightly more, 22.35 million people live currently having changed our relationship to a substance. And that is drastic. We're losing tons of people. We always see the ugly face of addiction, but we don't stop to recognize that people around us are living a life that is fulfilling to them, where they have made this amazing change, and that they have made this big difference. So I think I'm just inspired and just like awed, and I'm like, I like want to give 1,000 hugs. So amazing.
And John, talking about enough, when was it enough for you? What was?
So it was about five and a half months on the streets. I finally came to, and I do share this as well, because I think the biggest lie addicts, people that struggle with substance use, however you want to call it, to me, a drug is a drug is a drug. So I don't care if you shoot heroin in your neck or drink hand sanitizer or whatever you're doing, right? We try to fill this void that's never enough, whatever that is that you're compelled to use. Brain fart. What were we talking about?
When was it?
What was it enough?
Oh yeah, we're talking about addiction. So
you're like, I love my story too.
One of the biggest lies that addicts tell themselves, that they're only hurting themselves. Back in 2006, when I was homeless, I had met a dealer that would front me a $5 rock of crack cocaine. Back then they had payphones. 50 cents is what I would need to call my loved ones in Philadelphia. Because I'm a smart guy, that's 10%. And I did not want to waste 10% of anything. So the lie was that I was only hurting myself, but I had no idea that my loved ones were searching for me. And as a father now with 2 kids, I have an 11-year-old and a 3-year-old, and sometimes I'll just use the 3-year-old who's a little bit less independent. And if I'm like in the house, I'm like, Finn, and there's no answer, my heart drops. And that's like 2-3 seconds. I did that for 5 months to my parents. I'll never really be able to make that right fully. There's a course of action in my sobriety where we make amends, and I've attempted to make amends for all my wrongdoings, but I'll never be able to make that fully right. Not to any parent who doesn't know where their kids are. So lo and behold, I came to one day, I was 136 pounds. I had worn the left sole of my shoe had worn out because I had walked the streets. I don't know if you've ever walked on a shoe without a sole. It's very painful. And I saw the Salvation Army, and I walked in and I fell to my knees and I asked for help. And I got sober, right? I heard the shriek of my mother's voice. I won't go into the details of that, but they put me in a sober house. And then I was sober, which means I passed all the drug tests. I was still using, but no one knew it. And I conned my loved ones to bring me back to Philadelphia. My sister was getting married. And when I landed, I actually stayed abstinent. I didn't know what sobriety was. I just stopped using. Didn't mess up the wedding. And my father, God rest his soul, came up to me and he says, "You've always been the smartest. I want to give you one more shot." And he gave me a job at his company, and I was making 6 figures with this amount of time abstinent. And I got paid once, and I did it again. from the chaos of finally hearing what I did to them, and here I am high again. On August 15th of 2007, the only decision was to end my life. I guess that would have been my bottom. The level of despair, people talk about there's no hope. And if I can remember back, it was just black. Everything was black. The world was evil. Every person around was evil. I thought I was evil. And there was no flicker of hope. It was just darkness. There was no hope. There was no opportunity. There was no happiness. There was no joy. It was just my relationship with this drug that was destroying me. And I couldn't possibly imagine using it again. I couldn't possibly imagine not using it again. And so my only decision was to end my life. And let's just say God had a different plan. I came to on August 16th of 2007. And God willing, that's the last day I ever used. And then my actual journey of recovery started.
Guys, so beautiful, so beautiful. I wanna ask you something, because you talked abstinence versus sobriety. Can you tell us what the difference? In your mind, I can tell that it's very different.
I don't know where this will go. Okay, so I stopped using August 16th of 2007. I'm a liar, cheat, and a thief when I use. And surprisingly, I didn't know I'm a liar, cheat, and a thief, period. It's real easy for me when I'm using to justify all the conning and the manipulation, the lies, to blame it on the drug. But you now separated me from the drug, and I'm left with a liar, cheat, and a thief. When I was in early recovery, not using, I first had to make up for all that stuff I did on the street. So I overcompensated and lied to every woman possible to sleep with them to prove how manly I was. And then I would go brag to my friends because they might find out what I did. So let me overplay this. I started working at a call center and we were lying to people. I actually had no idea what recovery was. I was just not using. I then met what we call a man armed with the facts about himself, another sober man, a true sober man, and he educated me about what sobriety looked like, and I've walked that path. So the difference between abstinence and sobriety is really the behaviors of the personality, and actually has nothing to do with the drug itself.
Wow, thank you so much, John, for that, guys. As we're closing up this story and this little episode, what if there is anybody out there that's struggling with addiction, what do you want them to know? What do you want to leave them with?
Two things. One, my phone number is 610-938-7589. Somebody answered the phone for me at 3 a.m. that night. It saved my life, so my phone is on 24 hours a day for anyone seeking help. My wife knows that. Sometimes it bothers her when it rings in the middle of the night, but it's a pledge I've made to God to do that. And the other thing is, if there's a word for it, you're not the only one. So whether it's prostitution or abusing your child or stealing or whatever it is, those labels that we give ourselves, if there's a word for it, that means you're not the only one. And I found that the pain of going through my journey has become the most beautiful asset I have to others. Not only to, there's a lot of the rumor. Well, I don't know the data. Maybe you guys can answer. It's more prevalent of women to work in the sex industry. However, there are tons of men that work in the sex industry. And that violation of values and I can't believe I did that. The fact that I'm over on the side now, free, speaking freely about that, it gives hope to those that think they're the only one. So would I change anything? Absolutely not. I've been placed in a position to help others that think they're the only one. So my pain's the best thing that's ever happened to me.
I know.
John.
Well, everyone's
we have to talk at the end of this.
Everyone's is, right?
Yes,
Whether you
yes,
think about, somebody that's going through a divorce, and how am I going to get through with 2 kids? And then they meet another person that's been through a divorce and they're happy, you know, they're great with that. Yeah, anything.
Yeah.
Dr. Rodriguez, anything that you want to leave us with?
I mean, so beautifully said. I think one, you know, like I said earlier, just recognize that these stories exist all around us. If you're struggling with it, your story can change. You have the power to impact change. If you have someone that you love that's struggling with addiction, recognize it as a disease, recognize there's help out there for people, and recognize again that it's not a choice, and they're not waking up like purposely or intentionally harming you or harming themselves. It's really such a complex and complicated process that it is really difficult to put into a short time. And I'm not available 24/7, but there are addiction psychiatrists, addiction medicine providers everywhere. There are, you know, meetings that you can go to. Everybody's story can look different as well, and what's helpful for one person may or may not be helpful for another. And really, you know, just find someone that can see the human in you, and look at all your options and explore what makes the most sense for you in your life and your story. But yeah, never give up, and life can change. Even that moment of despair and hopelessness or darkness, or, you know, just blackness that we can call. I've had a lot of patients be in that moment, and then, you know, they kind of find themselves again, forgive themselves, and go through the process, and suddenly those thoughts don't present themselves anymore. And that's with or without having, you know, a diagnosis of depression. So I think seek help. People are out there to help. People like John, people like me. There's so much that we've learned. So don't give up.
If I may, one more.
Please.
Then I think it's very important if anyone's watching this and they're struggling and all they see is something bad. I used to think I was a bad son, a bad brother, a bad boyfriend, a bad worker, a bad friend. We are not bad people getting good. We're sick people getting well.
Mm-hmm.
The illusion of the addiction is, I'm gonna take a dad, and he's watching his 2-year-old, and he's addicted to opiates. He needs to do the drug. His belief is, I need to do the drug to get right so I can be the father that this kid needs. Not, I'm gonna leave this kid alone in the house as a bad dad to go cop. So like, if you're not a sociopath, which many of us aren't, we actually believe that the substance is making us fulfill those roles that we have in our lives, right? Let me get right so I can be the fun dad. Let me get right so I can be the romantic husband. Let me get right, whatever right means for that. But what ends up happening is, if you do struggle with addiction, you do one, and 6 months later, you're selling your butt on the streets again. You're like, darn it, did that again.
Yeah.
I make jest about it. But the idea isn't that I'm going to commit these crimes. The idea is, let me just get right so I can fulfill that role.
Well, for you, the root was, right, like, I have to be smart, I have to be successful. And when cocaine came into your life, okay, now this is perfect. Right? So it's so interesting, guys. You know, I'm in the therapy field, and I just love working with all the way, what's over here, because there's just so much there. Guys, thank you for joining us. You can find Dr. Rodriguez at Reclaim Sunshine Psychiatry. And in those dark moments, we need a little bit of ray of sunshine, just like she brings and John brings as well. Guys, next episode, we're going to talk about sex addiction. So we're going to bring back some of those ideas about sexuality and how do we talk about sex in addiction treatment. So stay tuned. Thank you again for joining me. Remember that I believe in the power of community. So if you know anyone that can use this information, please forward it to them. Any questions, anything you need, we have a little team right here that's ready to help. Thank you again, and see you soon.